What does it mean to be bleeding money? What does that mean? It's pretty self-explanatory. I think most people have, through TV and just different sources of media or versions of media, have been able to piece together what it means to be bleeding money. Basically, you're losing a lot more money than you're bringing in. It's a little more in depth than that. That's just a very simple definition to it, and it does suit. But I want to cover more of course, what bleeding money is, but in addition, maybe even the type of situations that can lead to this happening, as this is something that I think a lot of companies are going through right now. So, first things first, again, bleeding money basically means you're losing a lot more money than you're bringing in. Primarily in that it's kind of uncontrollable in terms of the money that you're putting out. You don't have so much control over it. So, that's one of the main details when it comes to bleeding money. This brings up an interesting question. Can you, on a personal level, not your job, bleed money? Absolutely, easily. If anything, most people, especially in our younger years, this is something that's kind of considered pretty much regular, right? We all have bled money. We've all, whether it's subscriptions, even though that's in our control, but whether it's different subscriptions, just our spending habits and things like that, like we can definitely bring money. We can definitely overspend by either miscalculating how much we're bringing in versus how much we have room to spend, or something like, let's say, a car accident or something happens. It was not our fault, but now we're out of a car. And let's say you absolutely need one to get to work. You may have a rental that you have to spend money on profusely over the period of time. You may end up getting a new car, which I think is something most people tend to get. And most people usually don't have a few thousand or something on them to even get a little beater just to carry them from point A to point B. Many, if not most people, I think end up getting a newer or just end up leasing a car of some kind, which becomes a financial obligation, which definitely can play a role in them bleeding money, aka losing more than they are bringing in and probably should be spending to maintain whatever their lifestyle is. All right, so it's pretty much common sense that mass layoffs have been going on for, I think, a couple years at this point, to be honest. And they're not slowing down. Here we are at the top of 2024, and we were hoping that the economy would turn around, the job market in particular would turn around. And no, it just seems like we keep getting hit over the head with more and more mass layoffs left and right. Already within the first month, entire staffs have been laid off from big corporations. Sizable layoffs have happened with other ones, but not as big, right? So it keeps on coming. The thing is, these type of situations can happen because of things that are outside of your company's control, right? And I'm not talking about any company in particular. That's not what I do. But as someone that's kind of going through this in a version, there are a few things that could lead to this outside of the company's control that leads to them deciding we need to cut people, whether contractors or employees, under our roof, so that we can maintain what we still have left over financially and in the workforce. First reason, vendors. For those who don't know, a vendor is any organization that provides a product or service to other people, whether that's the general public or whether that's another company. It basically means you sell something, bottom line. So if you so much as sell mixtapes out the hood of your car or out the trunk of your car, you're a vendor. We just don't tend to look at it like that. Versus if you go to a music event or some type of homecoming, especially HBCU homecomings, and you got all the different tents with food and all this and that, the food vendors, it is just that. You're just, if you sell something, people have to buy to get it, you're a vendor. It doesn't have to be, like a big corporation. You're a vendor. So vendors can actually be a trigger for this, because the thing is, when you have a contract-based relationship with a vendor, so you have your own company and then you have another company that you have a relationship with because they provide you with parts or some type of service that you need to keep functioning. What happens is, at least even if the general public doesn't know, behind closed doors, I'm sure other corporate professionals, C-suite people and executives, they know about these relationships. You most likely tell it at that. So what happens is, when you have a vendor that on their side may violate certain laws and a bunch of things, and now they get shut down, or it's just in your best interest to distance yourself from them, that could lead to your company bleeding money. Because let's say if the company was providing a hardware part, like a physical part that you needed to get some of your products up and running, and now you find out they have, let's say, a human labor violation or something like that, now your company has to distance yourself from them. except you may have already paid them for whatever it is that they were providing to you. So the way companies tend to look at this is, well, we already paid for whatever these parts or these devices are that we need, that you were going to send to us. But because we don't want to look bad, now we have to leave that stuff on the table. Now we have to just let those products just sit on the shelf. You can't send them to us or nothing. The way companies calculate this is that because those products aren't being used, but they've already been paid for, accountants and other finance people they see that as loss of money over time, depreciating, basically. When something loses money or value over time, it's known as depreciation, versus when it gains money or value over time, it's appreciation. In this case, that's depreciation. So companies view that as money still kind of not necessarily going out, but money that we're not getting a return on. We purchase something that we're not able to make money back off of, right? Which is the whole core business. That's why you have the concept, especially in the stock market, buy low. I'm still spending money, but when I sell it at a higher stock price, I'm making my money back and then some, and that's how I made a profit. And now, because of what your vendor did, you may have to switch vendors. You may have to start negotiating with other companies that can provide you with the same service or product that you were using to keep your operation flowing. You may have to move a portion of your operation from one country to another country, because depending on what country you're in, that determines whether or not, the employees and the wages of things are more expensive or cheaper than in other places, right? Which that's a pretty quick move. You may have to come to the decision at the drop of a dime. Hey, we may have to move a portion of our operation from just like the other side of the world to the US or to Canada or somewhere in Latin America or somewhere in Southern America, South America, right? And that's one big decision to make, because now you have to train people, you have to interview people, you have to maybe build a brand new facility. You have to do a bunch of things when you make a move like that. But that's money you have to put out, because that's money that ultimately should lead to you making more money back in so that everything gets stable again, right? So that's where having a good vendor is a pretty big deal, because if you mess around and get with the wrong vendor, especially one that has a pretty bad reputation as it is, you're pretty much asking for trouble at some point down the line. It may not be right away, but chances are it will happen down the line, right? Another version of a trigger that can cause you to start bleeding money is honestly just your expenses are way too high. That can be rent from a rental space, a studio space you use specifically for work. That can be on a personal note, is rent like on a personal note. That can be, again, like your car and your car note. Just whenever your general expenses are way too high, even if you make enough to cover it, you're probably not holding on to as much money as you could if you made certain choices, different choices at some point. And we've already covered this part, but again, can you bleed money in your personal life? Yes, but I will say this. I think because of the state, not only of the US, but the world, at least the Western world, I think we're in a very interesting position where everyone's kind of perpetually bleeding money, because jobs are not as abundant as they used to be. A lot of companies are laying people off in some shape or form in an attempt to stay afloat, which we don't know what their business is and why they're making those choices, right? A lot of jobs are being advertised online as if they're available, when in reality the company already knows who they want, and it's most likely an internal hire, but for legal reasons they have to advertise it, right? So that's another thing that's getting people's hopes up. They get hundreds of applications, which is another thing. You get hundreds of people applying for the same position, good, high paying, wherever the case is, only for it to disappear for a short amount of time, and then the company reposts it later, so you don't know the legitimacy of this position, right? It's a few different things. So I think we're in a very interesting state where it seems like more people, at least more and more people coming out with it on a regular basis, seem to be in a position of bleeding money, except it wasn't their choice, Like, we have C-suite or director level executives of these different companies getting laid off, and they're going months without being able to find work. And then on top of that, and this is something else that I spoke to my manager about, everyone's on edge. Because now if you make so much as a single mistake, or maybe a couple medium to minor level mistakes on the job, it seems like everyone's getting let go at the drop of a dime. So no one feels comfortable actually like experimenting with their job. And I don't mean experiment like to toy with or to play with, but they don't feel comfortable figuring out like what's their personal routine when it comes to getting the job done. How do they go about, automating different parts of their job or utilizing different resources that may actually be good for them, right? Or just a creative way of getting a job done. Like everyone's just so on edge because they don't want to move too far left or too far right because they don't know if that's going to be the one thing where if things didn't go their way, where they're gone. They're let go at the drop of a dime. And we've already talked about how many people, even if they give notice to leave a job, they're being walked out right on the spot. So who's to say that this won't happen to people when they make one little whoopsie and now all of a sudden they have to look forward to a minimum of 6 months looking for another position in this job market. So to counter this whole just change of environment that's happened pretty quick over the last 3 to 4 years, many people are starting to jump into LLC world. Everywhere, everybody all of a sudden wants to be a business owner, or especially if you're a minority such as myself. This is something that has kind of been pushed to a degree with us before, but now it's like everyone has to do it or wants to do it. It's the only way to be stable. And many people are finding out like, no, I'm not cut out for this. I don't want to do this, or it's not turned out how I would have liked. Some people started one company, at the top of 2020, 2021, 2022, when things were a little more rough. And by the end of that year, they may have been multi six figs or even millionaires. They say like within the 2 years that the world kind of just stopped because of the pandemic, that here in the US, that the number of millionaires increased by, I think it was over 10 or 20%, something like that. I think it increased by over 10%, right? Just within like a couple year time span when people really weren't going outside like that. Social interactions weren't, they were kind of banned for the time being, right? To the point where you can face legal action if you didn't have on a mask and if you were too close to other people. So, that's what a lot of people are doing. But now people are trying to replicate those same results. And for some, it might be working where they do end up making a lot of money within 6 months or 12 months. And they're like, okay, I can leave my 9 to 5 and do content creation full time. While others are finding out, even if I do this and even if I am making more money with, content creation or whatever side hustle, I still want to have a stability or level of security with an actual job, whether I have one in the moment or not. So different approaches, but now everyone's kind of trying to find, or rather use the same type of solution to fix their financial problems, only to find that they're digging themselves more into a financial hole, aka bleeding money. So that's where we're at right now. Let's see where this goes. But hope this video was helpful for you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at that. If you have any feedback for me, leave comments down in the section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.